Imagine a woman who survived 18 years, completely alone, on a barren, wind-blasted island. No people, no rescue, no voice except her own. And just 7 weeks after she was finally saved, she was dead. The most shocking part, the real reason she died, is something people still ignore. Stay with this story, because the ending changes everything you think you know about rescue. This is the true story of the lone woman of San Nicolas Island. History calls her Juana Maria. Her real name, we never even bothered to write down. Off the coast of California, a small sailing ship fights heavy surf near a narrow island. On the beach, soldiers and sailors are rushing the last islanders into boats. Waves are rising. The wind is howling. Dark clouds are closing in. This is the end of a tiny tribe, the Nicolino. In the chaos, one scene stands out. A woman suddenly realizes her young child is missing. She screams his name. She jumps from the loaded boat back toward the shore. She thinks she can grab him and catch the next trip. Some later versions tell the details differently, but the ending is always the same. The weather turns worse. The captain looks at the sky and the waves and makes a choice. He orders the anchor raised. The ship turns toward the mainland. When the ship finally sails away, one woman is still on the island. Her people beg him to go back. He says the sea is too dangerous. He promises they'll return later. They never do. Picture yourself on that deck. Your home shrinking into the fog, knowing that somewhere on that strip of rock, someone you love is standing alone. No one on that ship knew it yet. But that single mistake would cut one woman off from the rest of humanity for the next 18 years. San Nicolas is not a friendly place. No forests, which means no trees for easy shelter or firewood. No rivers, which means if one of the few springs dries up, you die. Just rock, sand, and brutal wind slamming the island day after day. Steep cliffs drop straight into cold Pacific water. If you slip, the ocean doesn't just hurt you. It erases you. But under the waves, the story flips. Thick kelp forests sway in the current, future hunting grounds. Shellfish cling to the rocks, future meals. Seals and sea lions haul out on lonely beaches, fat and protein if you can reach them. If you don't know this island, it will kill you. If you do, the ocean becomes your pantry. The Nicolino had lived here for thousands of years. They knew where every spring bled from the rock, when each reef was safe to cross, which winds meant good fishing, and which meant stay home or die. Now, almost all of that knowledge lived in one person's mind. But to understand why she ended up completely alone on this brutal island, you have to know who destroyed her world. And it wasn't just one person. From her point of view, it started with strangers on the horizon. First, men in boats arrived and killed the animals, sea otters, seals, anything with valuable fur. When her people resisted, some of those men killed people too. Then the invisible killers came, new diseases. A village that had once been in the hundreds shrank to a few dozen survivors. Far away, officials and priests decided island people shouldn't live out there anymore. They would be moved to mainland missions for their own good. One day, someone simply told her people, "You all have to go. You can't stay. This is not your home anymore." That chain of choices, hunters, sickness, government orders, is what would eventually leave one woman standing alone on San Nicolas, watching the only ship disappear. The evacuated Nicolino were taken to the Santa Barbara mission. Within a few years, most of them were dead. Not from war this time, just from diseases they had never faced before. No one sent a second ship back for the woman on San Nicolas. No letters, no visits, no rescue. On the island, she had no way to know. In her mind, her people might still be alive somewhere, just far away. Maybe the ship would come back one day. In reality, she was almost certainly the last Nicolino, the last speaker of her language, the last person who knew her people's songs and stories. And she probably never knew that she had become the final voice of her entire culture. Put yourself in her place. The ship gone. The village empty. Only wind and waves for company. At first she would have searched. Over the ridges. Through abandoned huts. Along the beaches where boats once landed. Calling out, listening. Hearing only the surf and the birds. Then the truth would sink in. No one was coming. Not today. Maybe not ever. In that moment she faced two options. Lie down and wait to die. Or clench her teeth and build a new life from almost nothing. She chose to live. To understand how extreme that choice was. The real sailor behind the Robinson Crusoe story, Alexander Selkirk, survived about 4 years alone on an island with trees, goats, and tools, and he almost broke under the strain. As age, he would endure 18 years. With bare rock bones in the sea. And the way she did it is hard to believe. In just a minute, you'll see how she turned the skeleton of a dead whale into a house. Shelter was first. Years later, archaeologists on San Nicolas found the remains of a house built from whale bones. Almost certainly hers. Picture it. Great ribs and jawbones driven into the ground. Curved together into a frame. Covered with brush and sod to block the wind. Now imagine doing that alone. Dragging each heavy bone over sand and rock. Lifting it, setting it so it wouldn't fall. She also built lighter shelters in other spots. She scraped and softened skins from birds and seals. She cut and tied feathers into a skirt. When hunters finally met her, she was wearing a skirt of dark cormorant feathers. Layered neatly like scales. Practical and beautiful. For tool, she used whatever she could salvage from the abandoned village. Everything else she rebuilt from stone, bone, and shell. Every object had to work, break, be fixed, and work again. Food was a daily mission. At low tide, she pried mussels and abalone off the rocks. She caught fish in the kelp beds. When she could, she took a seal or sea lion for meat and fat. She dug for roots and picked coastal plants when they were in season. Archaeologists later found piles of shells and bones near her camps. Garbage to her. A survival record to us. But food wasn't the hardest resource. Water was. San Nicolas has only a few small springs and seeps. She had to know exactly where they were when they flowed best, and how much she could take. She probably also caught rainwater in rock depressions, or in tight woven containers sealed with natural asphalt. One dry season. One bad miscalculation. And her story would have ended. But hunger didn't kill her. Thirst didn't kill her. Storms didn't finish her. The island did not manage to break her body. Something else was far more dangerous. Silence. Most of us never face true isolation. Prisoners hear voices through walls. Hermits know there are people nearby if they really need them. For 18 years she had none of that. Her language had no one to answer it. No one to share memories with. No arguments, no jokes. So what do you do when your words have nowhere to go? You keep speaking anyway. To birds. To the sky. To the sea. To yourself. When hunters later met her, they said she sang often. Cheerful songs in a language no one recognized. Maybe they were children's songs. Maybe prayers. Maybe funeral songs for people she would never see again. No one wrote those words down. Those songs died with her. She probably marked time in small, personal ways. Watching which birds returned when, feeling the shift in winds and seasons. Every day carried the same risk. If she fell badly, there was no one to lift her. If she became too weak to gather food, there was no one to help. If a storm tore her shelter apart, there were no extra hands. Yet the structures she left behind are solid and clever. They don't look like the work of someone who gave up. While she was singing alone on that island, people on the mainland were turning her into a story. In Santa Barbara, a legend circulated about a woman on the island who had been left behind on the day of the evacuation. Fishermen and hunters who sailed near San Nicolas told strange tales. Distant smoke. Fresh footprints. recently cut seals. But the island was far. The trip cost money and carried risk. No one wanted to mount a full expedition for one unknown woman. The island woman became a ghost story. Then an American otter hunter named George Niedver heard new reports. Not old myths. Fresh signs. He became convinced someone was alive out there right now. First trip, distant smoke but no person. Second trip, footprints in faint paths but still no one. Did she see them and hide, or did the island swallow their voices before they reached her? Either way, for 2 trips, rescue came within reach and missed. On the third trip in 1853, everything changed. This time, they didn't just see traces. They saw her. Niedver's men were scouting inland when they found a small, neat hut, built from brush and whale bones. Far too careful to be a temporary hunting blind. Nearby, a thin column of smoke rose into the air. They walked toward it. Beside a small fire sat a woman. Middle-aged. Small in build. Long dark hair. She wore a skirt made of black cormorant feathers. Feathers overlapped in rows like scales. By the fire, roasted roots were laid out. She saw them. She did not run. She smiled. She spoke quickly in her own language. They tried Spanish. No one understood a word the others were saying. But gesture and tone did the work. She offered them food. She laughed at their confusion. She seemed curious rather than afraid. Niedver knew at once who she must be. The lost woman from all the stories. After some careful coaxing and gentle persuasion, she followed them to their boat. They rowed her out to the ship. For the first time in 18 years, she was surrounded by other human beings. Behind her, the island that had been her entire world shrank into the distance. At this point, it feels like the happy ending has finally started. But the real tragedy was only just beginning. They brought her to Santa Barbara. Crowded streets. Horses and wagons. Church bells. Strange buildings. New smells and foods. People flooded in to see her. The lone woman. The island woman. The legend now alive. She touched fabrics she had never seen. Stared at glass windows and iron tools. Smiled often. Watched crowds with open curiosity. Everyone agreed on one thing. She seemed cheerful. She sang in her unknown language. Locals tried to find a translator. Indigenous people from nearby groups were brought in. Some words sounded a little familiar. But not enough. No one made a proper record of her language. No one wrote down what she called herself. The local priest baptized her and gave her a new Christian name. Juana Maria. And then the same society that had finally rescued her exposed her to something far more deadly than storms. For 18 years, her diet was simple and lean. Mostly meat, shellfish, roots, and wild plants. Almost no sugar. Almost no processed starch. And 18 years with no contact with mainland diseases. Now suddenly, rich heavy town food. Bread and sugar. New bacteria and viruses in close, crowded rooms. Within weeks she became seriously ill. Most sources point to dysentery, an intense intestinal infection. Her gut wasn't ready for the sudden diet change. Her immune system wasn't ready for the town pathogens. 18 years of storms, hunger, injury, and total isolation hadn't killed her. 7 weeks of civilization did. In October 1853, Juana Maria died. Barely 7 weeks after her rescue. She was buried in an unmarked grave at the Santa Barbara Mission. The mission record lists her only as the native woman brought from San Nicolas Island. Her language, her stories, her real name, all went into the ground with her. For a long time, her story survived as rumor, then as fiction. In 1960, the novel Island of the Blue Dolphins turned a version of her life into a famous survival story. Like any novel, it smoothed and changed the truth. Meanwhile, real pieces of her world were scattered. From San Nicolas, collectors and scientists took tightly woven water bottles sealed with asphalt, feathered garments and capes, tools. Some were destroyed in disasters or vanished into private collections. In recent decades, archaeologists, working under strict rules on the now closed island, have found more. The remains of a whalebone house, like the one she lived in. Shell and bone piles that map out her diet and movements. Multiple campsites, showing she still moved with the seasons even when she was alone. These fragments give us glimpses. But there is one thing they can never bring back. You can tell her story as a survival tale. A woman left behind, building a house from whale bones, hunting, gathering, and singing to herself, staying alive for 18 years, where most of us wouldn't last a week. But she was not an adventurer testing herself. She was pushed into isolation, by traders, by disease, by a system that decided her people no longer belonged on their own island. What hurts most is what disappeared with her. We don't know her real name. We don't know a single full sentence of her language. The songs she kept alive for 18 years, singing alone to the wind and the waves. Every one of them went into the ground with her. All we know for sure is this. For nearly 20 years, on a narrow strip of rock in the Pacific, one woman woke up every morning in total isolation and chose to live. Nobody wrote her name. Nobody saved her language. But you made it to the end of her story. That alone keeps her alive a little bit longer. If you want more people to hear what happened to her, hit like. It tells the algorithm this story matters. And if you want more true survival stories, from frozen seas and burning deserts, to jungles, mountains, and other forgotten islands, make sure you subscribe.